Okay, good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we're going to be having a different sort of stream. I am going to be teaching the basics of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and in addition to that, how to use Roll20 and another fantastic app called Path Builder 2E. It's free to download. Sadly, it is available only on Android. But yeah, it has everything you need to create a character and get it ready to go. One of the best parts about it being on Android is that there's this fantastic app that you can download on desktop called BlueStacks, and it allows you to effectively emulate in Android. So you can download things off Google Play and then use it. So let's just get right into it. So if you're new to tabletop, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a tabletop role-playing game. And what that means, defined by Wikipedia, it is a form of role-playing game in which the participants describe their characters' actions through speech. There are a lot of different types of TTRPGs. As you may or may not already know, Dungeons & Dragons is certainly the most popular version. There are many references to it in pop culture. And 5th edition is the quote-unquote gold standard. It is the most recent edition in the Dungeons & Dragons franchise, and it is the most popular edition by far. The reason for being is that 4th edition kind of sucked, and 5th edition streamlined a lot of things. They cut down a lot of the math involved. It's very simple to play, very easy to get into, but unfortunately, it does have a lot left to be desired. I don't think it gives the level of customization that a lot of people seek. Some people like simplicity, and there's nothing wrong with simplicity. If you're looking for something simple, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition will certainly get the job done. Thank you for the host, Buckster. I appreciate it. But in any case, what happens in a game of a tabletop RPG is that you create a character and then you take on that the personality of that character. And it could be you, it could be someone different than you. So your personality will be dependent on the kind of character that you create. And in a tabletop role-playing game, thank you so much for the resub, Joe. 33 months, 16-month streak. We are approaching our 4th child. So that's pretty crazy. What was I getting at? Yeah, and there are going to be a bunch of other people that you're going to be playing with that are going to have similar sorts of things. You form a party together and you go on fabulous adventures and accomplish all sorts of various feats and do all sorts of crazy shenanigans. So if you're coming from Pathfinder 1st Edition, there are a lot of differences between the two. A lot of these things have been done to smooth over gameplay, and as a result, it's going to feel a lot simpler in some respects. So in Pathfinder 1st Edition, the action economy works something like this. You had a certain number of free actions that you could take on your turn, or even out of turn, I guess. It was as much as the DM would allow. And then you would have a swift action if you had a swift action, and on top of that, you could take a move action, which could either be a move or a move equivalent action, a standard action, which was either an attack or casting a spell or another move. There are full round actions, which takes up both your move and your standard. 29 months, thank you so much, sir. Full round actions take up both your move and your standard, so you're still left with swift and free. Full round actions include full round attacks, or running, or withdrawing. Yeah, you wish, Scooty. I'll get to that towards the end, but please. Brother Buckster, thank you so much for the follow. And then the immediate actions, which you could use at any point, such as Featherfall or Second Wind. They could be taken at any point during the round, whether or not it was your turn or not. That has been replaced by reactions, and then finally one-round actions are like summoning spells, which don't take effect until the beginning of your next turn, and that kind of action has been removed completely. And what they replaced it with was just 3 independent equally weighted options. And you also, in addition to that, you gain 1 reaction per round. So one of the classic free actions in Pathfinder First Edition was the 5-foot step. You can 5-foot step as a free action so long as you didn't move for the rest of the round. And there were quite a few feats based around that 5-foot step. There was step up. So if an enemy took a 5-foot step, move face into the top right corner. Sure, let me do that. I have to add Chrome. Hold on. Add window capture, Chrome, and then order, move to bottom. Is that better? It's better. Hey, what's up, Mel? I mean, I'm going to be linking the PowerPoint at the end anyway, so it doesn't actually matter. But if it matters to you, then it matters to you, and I'll do that now. In addition, so Pathfinder First Edition was notorious for a lot of different types of bonuses. So Haste gave you a dodge bonus to armor class. It gave you a morale bonus to attack rolls, and it was just crazy. So Inspire Competence gave a competence bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls, but a morale bonus to saving throws, and it was just, there were way too many numbers to keep track of. So they removed all sorts of things, and there was this they removed all of that, and they just simplified it to 3 different types of boosts in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Status bonuses are those provided by spells. Item bonuses are provided from items. So if you have a +1 weapon, you would gain an item bonus to attack rolls, and that would not stack with another item bonus. And then circumstance bonuses, which are, as the word implies, circumstantial. Again, multiple bonuses of the same type don't stack. So do keep in mind that you would only take the greater bonus if, say, you were affected by Bless, which provides a morale bonus to attack rolls, and then say a 6th level heroism, which gives you a +2 bonus, a +2 morale bonus to attack rolls. So you would only take that +2. They would not stack and give you a +3. Base attack bonus was a thing in Pathfinder First Edition. There were classes with full base attack bonus, 3/4, and then 1/2. And what they did was they made it such that they introduced training. And training, which I'm going to be going into later, effectively just adds your level always to things that you were trained in. And then on top of that, there's going to be additional bonuses. So let's say let's take a fighter, right? They start off with expert proficiency in weapons, so they would add their level and then +4 to any attack roll they make with a weapon they're an expert in, which is all simple and martial weapons. Mental stats. So in Pathfinder First Edition, if you had a high casting score, you would gain additional spells per day. That led to a lot of min-maxing and basically saying, okay, I need to pump out, if I'm playing a wizard, I need to pump out my intelligence as hard as possible and to hell with all of my other stats. Now, it's still important to have a strong mental stat score if you are a caster. But it's not as important because it's only affecting your spell difficulty class. What's up, Tiny? Or hey, what's up, Dorky? You changed your username again. But it's nice to see you. It affects your spell attack rolls now. So attacks such as Shocking Grasp back in Pathfinder First Edition would require either strength or dex, whether or not you had a weapon finesse. But now, it would, if you're playing a sorcerer, for instance, Shocking Grasp would use your charisma ability score modifier instead of strength or dex. The one exception here is the cleric. Hey, what's up, Stamina? Nice to see you again. The cleric does get bonus spells based on their charisma modifier. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So basically, they replaced channel energy in this edition and basically gave you extra healing or harming spells depending on your charisma modifier. In addition to that, archetypes are now baked into the class instead of being optional. So for instance, if we go back to the Pathfinder First Edition Alchemist, there were different sorts of archetypes such as Grenadier, Vivisectionist. Those are the only ones that matter, so those are the only 2 I remember. So at first level, a first level Alchemist in Pathfinder 2nd Edition would you pick a subclass immediately. So you would either pick the bomber, the mutagenist, or the chirurgeon, and you would get additional bonuses based on that. So before I forget and before I continue further, I'm going to link this in my Discord because I forgot. Thanks, Dorky. I appreciate that. At everyone, Pathfinder 2E webinar. What was I going after? They also introduced backgrounds, which is an important part of character creation to replace traits. Traits were pretty much bullshit because everyone ended up being some poor, bullied human, so they could get that sweet, sweet bonus to initiative. And backgrounds are impactful in the sense that they affect your character's ability scores, but they're not as impactful as they... there's a bunch of leeway with the backgrounds, and the other bonuses they provide are marginal as opposed to significant in Pathfinder 1st Edition. Because getting a +2 bonus to initiative or a +1 bonus to a saving throw is important, but in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you just gain a skill feat. And we'll be going over that later. One more thing to consider from Pathfinder 1st Edition is that skills have been condensed. There were a lot of superfluous skills in Pathfinder 1st Edition, such as knowledge geography, knowledge engineering, appraise, sleight of hand. Like, there's a bunch of really, really kind of useless skills, and they've been all condensed. So knowledge history, nobody ever took. Knowledge nobility, nobody ever took. So they combined those two and the knowledge local into society, and they just made it one skill, so you don't have to worry about splitting up your skill ranks. And then finally, perception. Perception was by far and away the most important skill in Pathfinder 1st Edition, and is still the most important skill in Pathfinder 2nd. However, perception is a separate skill. You cannot increase it as you would normal skills, and we'll go into that later as well. Perception is now tied to your class, so each class has a certain training level in perception, and thankfully this time fighters get an expert proficiency in perception at level 1, despite the fact that they did not receive it as a class skill in Pathfinder 1, which was kind of dumb, because I'm pretty sure fighters need to see in order to fight, but I guess not, because Paizo really didn't know what they were doing in Pathfinder 1st Edition. But it's okay, because they improved so much in Pathfinder 2nd. So if you're coming from Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and I'm sure many of you are, the biggest thing that you're going to notice is that there is no more advantage/disadvantage system, except when there is. So advantage, disadvantage, for those of you who don't know, is that... Oh, hey, what's up, Darth? Glad that you could make it, and I agree. I can see, I can fight! But so there is no more advantage, disadvantage. It was a pretty... to those of you who don't know what this is, it was a pretty bullshit system in in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, where if you did something, you could get an advantage on a roll, to mean okay, there's a good chance you're going to get success, or you get disadvantage if you're trying to do something hard. So this doesn't exist in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. One notable exception is True Strike, and what that is you're allowed to make when you make an attack, you get to roll twice and take better. Roasted Fighting Chicken, thank you so much for the 8-person raid. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy your stay here. Thank you so much. I lost my train of thought. The one thing that is similar to the advantage-disadvantage system is hero points. At the beginning of every session, every player character starts off with 1 hero point. Additional hero points can be given if someone is doing something particular heroic, or just throughout the course of a game. And hero points is a fortune effect, which means it doesn't stack with other fortune effects like True Strike, and what it allows you to do is re-roll if you are unhappy with your first roll. However, you must accept the consequences of your second roll, even if it is worse. So that is something to consider. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, feats were an option that you could take instead of ability score increases. I think I did this wrong. I'm looking at the next point. I'm pretty sure ability score increases. Is it fifth, and then every 5 thereafter? Renga kills. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate it. In any case, maybe not really. So feats, you know, in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition are either hot garbage, and I can't think of the hot garbage ones, or completely broken, which is Polar Master. But in Pathfinder 2nd edition, you get feats at like every level and for everything. So there's 4 separate types of feats. There's ancestry feats, skill feats, general feats, and class feats. And they do all sorts of things. And yeah, ability scores in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you can increase 1 stat by 2 or 2 stats by 1 up to a maximum of 20. And you can do this 4 times. And in Pathfinder 2nd edition, you also gain your stat ups at 5th level every 5 levels. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, however, what you can do is you can increase 4 of your stats by +2, unless it's 18 or more, in which case it's only by 1. So if you're increasing an 18, 2 16s, and a 14, it would become 19, 18, 18, 16. There is no hard cap on your stats, but based on how ability score generation goes, it is impossible to have over a 22 at 20th level without the help of an apex item, which would get you a +2 bonus to the chosen ability score, so you could get a maximum of 24. Proficiency increases at every level, so if you're trained in a skill, it'll increase by 1 every level. And it won't happen at arbitrary points. There's no such thing as a short rest. I guess it kind of is with how medicine works, but there's no concept of like, oh, you rest for an hour, you gain your hit die plus con HP back or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. I played 5e exactly in 1 campaign. And I loved the group that I was in, but I absolutely hated the system. I thought it was dog shit, because it is. And then finally, we have Vanshian casting in this system for our prepared spellcasters, the Druid, the Witch, the Cleric, and the Wizard. And effectively, that means that instead of preparing your spells and then being able to cast them in slots as you so choose, each slot corresponds to 1 spell. And if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So that is something to keep in mind moving forward. Quick rundown of ability scores. So for those of you new to tabletop RPGs, generally speaking, there's going to be 6 primary ability scores that you are concerned with. Strength is a measure of your physical might. It's not, you know... I mean, it's intuitive, right? So it affects your accuracy with melee weapons, it affects your damage with melee weapons and thrown weapons, your athletics skill, and your carrying capacity. Dexterity is your agility, not speed, but how quick you can react to certain things, and it affects your accuracy with ranged attacks, accuracy with finesse weapons, your reflex saves, which is basically your ability to dodge, acrobatics, stealth, and thievery skills. Constitution doesn't affect any skills, but it does affect something very important, your hit points. Every time you gain a level, including first, you will add your Constitution modifier to your hit point total, and it applies retroactively. So if your modifier goes up from +2 to +3, you would gain 3 hit points at every level as opposed to 2, and you'd have to go back and correct that. And other things that Constitution does is affects your fortitude saves, which is basically your resistance to bodily harm, such as poisons, and it also affects how long you can hold your breath or like participate in a forced march, that sort of thing. And now, so the physical ability scores are pretty straightforward. I mean, they make sense if you think about it. The mental ability scores are a bit harder to differentiate between, and there is overlap. And I'm not gonna like debate this, but charisma sucks. Intelligence is your ability to reason, your ability to recall, and your ability to hold things in your memory. So intelligence directly affects the number of skills you're trained in. So each class has a certain number of skills they're trained in, and then you always add your intelligence modifier. If that modifier goes up, you gain training in more skills. Each character will begin play knowing 2 languages, except gnomes, they start with 3. And every time you for every point of intelligence you have, you gain an additional language known, which is nice. It also affects the super brainy skills, Arcana, Crafting, Society. It also affects lore, because lore is almost always used to recall knowledge, or it's either that or to earn income, which I'll go into detail later. And occultism, which is effectively knowledge dungeoneering. Yeah, I mean, why don't you have more charisma? Because you're playing a sorcerer, Seer. You need charisma, otherwise your spells will do nothing. But it's okay, because your spells don't do anything anyways, because you don't know how to properly cast. Wisdom. Wisdom is, by far and away, the most important mental stat. Is my PP big? Size is relative, Kent, you know? That's what I have to respond with. So it affects your perception score, which is the most rolled skill in the game, obviously. And in this edition, when you roll initiative, you actually roll one of your skills. And it defaults to perception, so it is important to have a high wisdom, because going first is good. Yo, continue. Thank you so much for the sub, I appreciate it. It also affects your will saves, which is important, because those are the things that affect your mind. And if you fail a will save, you might die, or more importantly, kill the rest of your party. It also affects other skills that you need patience and some sort of discipline with, so it affects medicine, nature, religion, and survival checks. Finally, charisma. If you're not playing a charisma-based caster, it doesn't really do a lot. It's helpful for intimidate builds, but other than that, it doesn't really have too much of an impact. I'm not saying charisma isn't important, but I'm saying exactly that charisma isn't important. If you have innate spells from an ancestry feat or something like that, your modifier and training will be based off your charisma modifier. In addition to that, it affects your social skills, and it's important for at least one person in the party to have good social skills, because as it turns out, talking is important for one person, and probably not more than that. But diplomacy is the big one. You're going to be talking to neutral people most of the time. Deception is good for feinting and for tricking people. And then finally, intimidation is nice if you want to be a bully, which can come in handy. It can frighten people in combat, which is pretty nice. And then finally, we have performance if you like stripping. Ancestries. Okay. They're formerly known as races. They're no longer, because ancestries are a different species, and a lot of people get up in arms over the presence of ability score modifiers from racial ability score modifiers. So my argument for that is, if you have an animal companion and you get a dog, you have to use the stats of a dog. If you have a cat, you have to use the stats and abilities of a cat. So nobody really gets up in arms over that, because it makes sense. Like, dogs and cats are different species. They have different ability scores. Like, dogs are hardier, while cats are more stealthy and tend to like pounce on enemies, so they would have higher dex. Dogs would probably have higher, strength and con. And if that's the case,
then why do people get so mad when you have to play the stats of a halfling?
So racial ability score modifiers are fine. If you have a problem with that, then go find a GM that doesn't have a problem with that, using different ability scores. But I am a GM that has that problem. I'm just going to throw it out there. Your stats are your stats. Everything is fine and balanced. Don't get up in arms over it. So every ancestry comes with a few different things. They have ancestry hit points, which is really nice, giving characters at level 1 a nice little buff to their survivability. In Pathfinder 1, there was no such thing, so if you were playing a sorcerer or wizard, you had 6 hit points. Yeah, and then you could die to a lot of things. And that's why every caster took toughness at level 1, so they wouldn't die. But now, with ancestry hit points, simply choosing an ancestry gives you additional hit points at first level over that of your class. It also comes with a certain size, medium or small. I think there's like 50-50 in terms of small versus medium. We got goblins, halflings, gnomes, leshies, and I think there's one other race that's small. Kobolds. Kobolds are small. And then you have a bunch of medium-sized races: elves, half-orcs, orcs, humans. You know the drill by now. Movement speed. So movement speed is different in Pathfinder 2nd Edition as opposed to Pathfinder 1st. The default movement speed in Pathfinder 1st was 30. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it's 25. Elves are lucky in that they start with 30-foot movement speed in order to reflect their long limbs, and dwarves are still cucked with 20 because they're dwarves. However, most of the small races that started off with 20 feet move speed in Pathfinder 1st Edition are now blessed with 25-foot movement speed in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Unfortunately, goblins did get the shaft. I believe they are still at 25, but halflings and gnomes also have 25, which is nice for them. Languages, as I had mentioned a bit ago, every ancestry starts off with 2 languages known. For elves, it's always going to include common and then their ancestral language. So common and elven for elves, and if they have a high intelligence modifier, they gain additional languages. Some of which are from a selected group, like these. If you're human, you get to basically just pick either a dialect or a separate language. And then finally, vision senses. There are 3 steps of vision senses. Normal vision, which means you can't see in low light, or you take a penalty if you're attacking an enemy in low light vision, and you cannot see in the dark at all. If you have low light vision, you don't have that penalty for attacking someone in low light vision, which is a fantastic change from Pathfinder 1st to Pathfinder 2nd, because rules is written, even if you had low light vision in Pathfinder 1st edition, enemies would still be concealed to you, and that is probably some of the dumbest thing. It is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And then finally, dark vision allows you to see in the dark. The difference between first edition and second edition is in first edition, the default was dark vision 60 feet, so you can only see 60 feet in the dark. In Pathfinder second edition, it is unlimited, which makes dark vision in this edition really fucking good. And I always play characters with dark vision because not having it fucking sucks. And then finally, with ability scores, racial ability scores, for every race, for most ancestries, for all the core ancestries except humans, it's a +2 to a physical stat, +2 to a mental stat, and then a free +2, which can go anywhere other than those 2 boosts, and then a flaw to one of the remaining 4 stats. So if we're playing an elf here, the free boost could be used to cancel out Constitution, and however, it couldn't be used to double down on dexterity or intelligence. Humans are, of course, the most balanced race, and they... I use race and ancestry interchangeably, and what the fuck did I just do? I clicked the bad button there. I apologize for that. Nobody saw that. What was I getting at after that? Oh yeah, humans get 2 +2s. They have to be in different stats. Easy peasy. After you select an ancestry, you select a heritage, also known as a sub-race to those of you that play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and there's additional boost to that. So if we take elves, there's the Cavern Elf, which gives them which gives them dark vision. And then there's like the Arctic Elf that gives them cold resistance. I think there's a Desert Elf that gives them heat resistance. And there's like a Seer Elf, which gives them innate magic, and there's all sorts of types of heritages. They, generally speaking, don't provide a significant bonus, but they're there to differentiate your character from others of the same, species. And then a subcategory of heritage is the lineage, and that includes Aasimars, Tieflings, Dhampir, that sort of thing. They're open to all characters, and they're no longer restricted to race. So in Pathfinder 1st Edition, the elemental touched characters, Aasimars, Dhampirs, and Tieflings, were restricted to half human and then half whatever the other thing was. But now you can be a Goblin Aasimar, for instance, or an Orc Tiefling, or whatever you so choose. And then finally, there are half Orcs and half Elves, as they're not quite lineages. I know a lot of people allow them to exist as such, but in my opinion and in my games, the ability to make a half kind with orcs and elves only apply to humans. So in my games, I only allow players to be a half elf or half orc if the other half is human. And then finally, you will gain ancestry feats So for elves, you get elven weapon training, which gives them proficiency in classical elven weapons, which are the longbow, rapier, longsword, and shortbow. Or you could give them nimble elf, which gives them a 5-foot bonus to their move speed, and etc. Ancestry feats are gained at first level and every 4 levels thereafter, and they increase in power as you go up in level. This is one really busted elven feat called Elven Instincts that I'm going to get into in a little bit. And they're really nice to have, and it is something that you have to track. So you gain 5 ancestry feats, and some ancestry feats are necessary so basically there's like chain feats, so like elven weapon proficiency goes into elven weapon elegance and expertise, so you get additional bonuses if you had the chain. Backgrounds. So the next thing you would choose when building a character is your background. So backgrounds usually don't provide mechanical benefits. It's usually like, oh, my character did this before they were becoming an adventurer. And that is true with these backgrounds. Like, oh, I was a farmer or a slave or a gladiator or that sort of thing. Back in D&D, you would only kill this time curve Billy without crutch items are so fun. I'm glad you're having fun with the game, Cantino. What backgrounds here is you gain a +2 to one of your stats, and it must be selected from 2 specific stats, and then a free +2 to any other stat. So if we take a look at what I selected here, the Martial Disciple, it gives you a +2 to either Strength or Dex, and then a +2 to any other stat that you didn't choose. So you could do +2 Strength, +2 Dex, or you could do like +2 Strength, +2 Con, +2 Dex, +2 Wisdom, that sort of thing. It also gives you training in a skill. So as we can see here, this will train you in either acrobatics or athletics, your choice. Most backgrounds don't give you that choice. They just force you to take one of them. And then 1 relevant lore skill. In this case, it's warfare lore, and lore skills are basically subsets of skills that you can use for like very specific things and also to earn income. And you also gain a skill feat based off the skill you're trained in. So you would either gain catfall if you chose acrobatics, or quick jump if you chose athletics in this case. And then finally, you would pick your class. Currently in Pathfinder 2nd edition, how the game works in general, because a lot of my players don't know how to play properly, and I actually have to spend a lot of time explaining how things are done, and I have to repeat myself often. So if they have any questions moving forward, I can just link them this video and tell them to watch it again and again and again until they understand it, instead of me having to waste my breath. So in Pathfinder 2nd edition, there are 16 classes. The core rulebook, which came out about a year ago, I think like just almost a year and a day ago, there are 12 classes, so it's the standard Pathfinder 11. So and also the Alchemist. So the Alchemist, Barbarian, Bard, Paladin, which is now called Champion because Champions have 3 different subclasses, one of which is the Paladin, and the other 2 are not the Paladin. Cleric, which now has 2 subclasses, the Cloistered Cleric and the War Priest. We're still waiting on the Inquisitor. Come on, Paizo. You know what Matthew wants. Please give it to him. The Druid, Fighter, Monk, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, and Wizard. And the Advanced Player's Guide, which came out, I think, like 3 or 4 days ago, included the Investigator, the Oracle, the Swashbuckler, and the Witch. And they announced very recently as well that next year we're going to get the Magus and the Summoner, which is really nice. So each class is different in that they will have different levels of training with weapons, armor, saving throws, and perception. There is going to be some overlap, of course. Most casters are proficient with all simple weapons and nothing more. The Bard gets a little bit more. They get the short swords, short bow, whip. The Wizard gets less because they only get the club, dagger, crossbow, staff, and a couple of other things. I don't know. All the martial classes, except the Monk, are trained in martial weapons. So, the long sword, long bow, that sort of thing. Armor proficiencies will vary. Only the Fighter and Champion are trained in all types of armor. The casters are usually only trained in light armor or no armor at all. The Monk is not trained in any armor because it slows them down. And then most martials are trained in either light or light and medium. So the Ranger and Barbarian are light and medium. The Rogue is light armor. And then, as I already said, the Fighter and Champion are trained in all armor. Shields. I didn't mention this here, but shields, all characters are trained in the use of shields. In combat, you can take a single action to raise your shield, and it will provide you the shield's bonus to your armor class. Saving throws. So you are either going to be trained or an expert in saving throws at level 1. Caster classes are always only trained in will saving throws unless you're a war priest or a Flames Mystery Oracle, in which case you'd get you'd be an expert in fortitude saves and reflex saves respectively. Other than that, you're just going to be trained in expert in will saves, trained in the other two, and then you'll get increases as you level up. All martial classes except the monk are trained in 2 saving throws. Barbarians are trained in fortitude and will, for instance. Rogues are trained in reflex and will. It's really nice to give the marshals buffs to their saving throws as they needed. So in Pathfinder First Edition, rogues only had reflex, fighters only had fortitude, and it was troublesome at times. But now that's certainly rebalanced, and that's nice. The monk is different in that they're experts in all saving throws, which is amazing, and a nice throwback to the Pathfinder First Edition monk, where they had good saving throws across the board. And now finally, perception is tied to class. There are 3 classes that can gain legendary in perception, and we'll go over that in a bit. The Ranger, Rogue, and Investigator. Most marshals start off as experts in perception, the exceptions being the monk, the champion, and the alchemist, who Paizo gave the middle finger to, but that's a story for another day. You can go watch my video on the alchemist for that. Hey Blondie, thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate you being here. Another change. Instead of having a hit die, you are now just given max hit points at every level. So in Pathfinder First Edition, if you're playing a fighter, you gain 10 hit points at first level plus your con mod, and then every level thereafter, you'd roll a d10 or take 5.5. A lot of people just round it up to 6. I rounded up to 6, but technically you're supposed to take the average, which is 5.5, and then round down at every level. So it'd be 5 and then 6, 5 and then 6. But yeah, now fighters just gain 10 hit points at every level, and then add your con mod at every level. In addition to that, classes gain 15 gold to spend on equipment at level 1. I remember there was a discrepancy of how much gold each class would get. So wizards would get like 35 or something like that. Druids get 70, and then fighters, rangers would get like 175. I am doing much better, Blondie. I started world building for an upcoming Pathfinder homebrew campaign, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. It's been taking my mind off of things, and it's just been fantastic. So I appreciate you asking, and I'd love to let you know that I'm doing much better. And then finally, instead of feats like you would normally get in Pathfinder 1 at every odd level, they're now granted at every even level. So all classes gain a class feat, which can do all sorts of things, gives you more cantrips, or gives you better action economy, and that happens at every even level. And then marshals gain the benefit of a guaranteed class feat at first level. Certain spellcaster subclasses can also get this feat at first level. So for instance, the wizard will choose an arcane thesis, and that will give them either the familiar class feat or a metamagic class feat, but not necessarily so. The druid and bard are guaranteed to gain a class feat at first level based on the order or muse that they select, and the sorcerer gets the shaft in that they will never receive a first level class feat. So now moving on to skills and training. Skills are there to be used to perform a wide variety of tasks based on the skill that you're using. For example, the stealth skill can be used to hide. The diplomacy skill can be used to make an impression or make a request. Intimidate can be used to coerce. Deception to feint. Thievery to palm an object, that sort of thing. Skill feats are earned at every even level, so whenever you gain a class feat, you also gain a skill feat. Skill feats are really nice as they allow you to do all sorts of things. For example, there's the acrobatic skill feat Kip Up, which allows you to stand from prone as a free action as opposed to an action, a 1-action ability, and it also doesn't provoke reactions, which is really nice. Skill increases are earned at every odd level except first, and the minimum requirements to be an expert is 2nd level, 7th level for master, and then 15th level for legendary. And if you notice here, it's 2nd level for experts and not 3rd. And the reason is because rogues and investigators are exceptions to this rule. They earn skill increases at every level except first, so they can easily become legendary in 6 different skills. And then on top of that, they also earn skill feats at every level. The investigator will earn a static skill feat based on their methodology. So a forensic scientist investigator would get battle medic at level 1, whereas rogues are free to choose whichever skill feats they want. So they could start off level 1 with battle medic, or if they wanted to, if they were trained in diplomacy, they could take bargain hunter, or if they were trained in athletics, they could take quick jump, that sort of thing. Trained in acrobatics, steady balance, etc. So there, speaking of training, there are 5 levels of training. The first level for skills is always going to be untrained. If you're untrained in a skill and are trying to use it, you do not add anything except your ability score modifier. So if you were untrained and were trying to, intimidate an enemy, you would just roll a flat d20 and then add your charisma modifier. If you're trained in a skill or ability, you add the relevant ability score modifier, and then you also add level +2. If you're an expert, it's level +4, master level +6, and then legendary level +8. And these +2s are really important because difficulty checks are going to be based on an average. So being as far above that average as possible is imperative. And certain skill feats are going to be locked behind a level of training. So for instance, as I said before, Kip Up, you need to first be a master in acrobatics in order for you to take it. And training in terms of perception and saving throws is it's basically set in stone. Like once you pick your class, that's what it's going to be for the rest of your adventuring career. So if you pick a champion, you're never going higher than expert in perception, for instance. The way to get around this is to take the feat Canny Acumen, and what this allows you to do is basically increase either one of your saving throws or your perception score from trained to expert immediately when you take it, and then at 17th level you become a master in that save or perception. I do believe that there are some dedication feats that allow you to get master proficiency in reflex and fortitude. Of the barbarian, you can get juggernaut that gives you master in fortitude, and then the rogue can get you master in reflex. I'm not sure if there is one for will. I'm sure there is. I'm sure it's a bard feat. Moving forward, if we want to build a character, there are a few things that we're going to need to do. The first thing we're going to do is select an ancestry and their ability boosts, followed up by a heritage and an ancestry feat. Afterwards, we're going to select a background, and we're going to get 2 ability boosts from there. A class is going to give us another ability boost, which is relevant to the class. So a caster would always get a bonus to their casting stat. So for instance, a druid would always receive a +2 bonus to wisdom. And then 4 free boosts thereafter, all of which must be to different stats. You must also select a subclass if possible, and then a class feat if you are a martial character. So what I actually want to do right now is I'm gonna open up a new window. Let me just add window capture, and I'm just say BlueStacks. And I believe I have it right here. So I have the Path Builder 2E app open right now on BlueStacks, which is really nice, and we're gonna just create a character from scratch. So I'm going to go with my good old go-to arranger. His name is Tyson Green. So you're going to choose your name. Your class is already selected. Ancestry, he is a human with the field medic background.
because Field Medic is broken because Battle Medicine is the best feat in the game.
Anyways, we're going to go select our ability score boost. Ancestry boost is going to be Dexterity and Wisdom. Background is going to be Constitution and Dexterity. Class boost is going to be to Dexterity because he's an archer. And then bonus is going to go there. This is actually Dexterity and Strength. This is Wisdom. The stats are 14, 18, 12, 10, 14, and 10. There's also this allow voluntary flaws. You can take 2 penalties for an additional boost, but there are restrictions for that, and I never allow that in any of my games because I'm a jerk. So I'm not going to go over that. Skill training. Rangers start off with training in nature and survival. My background as a field medic gives me training in medicine. So on top of that, I gain 4 additional skills in which to be trained. Rangers are trained with nature, survival, and then 4 more. So I go with acrobatics, athletics, religion, and stealth. The ancestry feat. I usually pick, what does he pick? Elven lore? Sorry, I didn't pick heritage first. Why does it say ancestry feat before heritage? It's so stupid. He is a half-elf, and I always take elven lore just to get some more skill training. The first one is to Arcana, and the second one is to nature, but since I'm already trained in nature, I get to pick something else, and I pick society. This training here goes into Arcana, which is nice. And then the class feat is Animal Companion because he has a pet wolf. And you can go here to edit this. So if you're using BlueStacks, this comes included. If you're not using BlueStacks, you do have to pay for this. However, this is a free app and it's absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend that you support the creator and chuck in $5 for this. I did, and it's absolutely wonderful. It's worth every penny, and I suggest you do the same. Hunter's Edge is the Ranger subclass, and you basically pick one whenever you hunt prey. In this case, because he is a surgeon, he takes precision. And that's all you need to build a character at level 1, and you can build all the way down to level 20. What I didn't yet cover here is, which moves over here, I'll move it this way. I need to purchase equipment and fill in some other things. So if you go to about, so you can choose your alignment, who's neutral good, gender, male, age, I think he's 26, I guess. I think he might have been, it's a little bit over under, and he worships Sarenrae. Languages are common in Elven, and he does not gain any additional languages because he only has 10 intelligence. If he had more intelligence, I would be able to select for more, but alas, per Yorick, he does not. Notes down here, if I had a backstory, which I do, I'd put it here. And then finally, you gain 15 gold in which to spend on stuff. So because he is an archer, let me go to weapons. I give him a short bow. Yeah, and then because he worships Sarenrae, you get him a scimitar. That's her favorite weapon. I'm not going to be covering religion and all that because you can watch my guide to the cleric, which is going to happen sometime within the next month. So stay tuned for that, and I'll be discussing that there. Armor, you can just go unarmored, but because he doesn't like not having armor, give him leather armor. Shield, not necessarily required because he's an archer, but a wooden shield is probably fine. At this point, you do need to keep track of bulk, current bulk 4, and I'll be going over bulk later down the line. With 8 gold left, I'm going to get him an adventurer's kit, some arrows, and let's get some healer's tools because he is a surgeon. Yeah, and there we go. The Rangers don't have spells unless they do, thanks to the Warden. What is it called? Learning the focus spells. We're going to go into that later. So yeah, I think we're done with that for now. So that's basically that's it. That's all you need to do to build a character. That took me less than 5 minutes, and I'm already ready to go. And that's awesome. But however, we do have to add it into Roll20, and I don't know why I full screen this because I need to get out of here just so I could go into Roll20. So if you have a character sheet, you can build your character here. So I know you can't see that, but there's a little journal tab. I would click on this journal tab, and that brings me to my character sheet, and then I can change everything in here. This can be a bit tricky to use, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be good to go for the rest of your life. So you can stop pestering me to see if you did everything right, because you won't need to, because you'll know that you've done everything right. So you would change your ancestry and heritage, half-elf, player name Matt, experience 0, class ranger, background field medic, size medium, alignment neutral good, deity siren. Still pester me, I won't respond. I'll just tell you to fuck off and die. Ancestry, humans get ancestry bonus of 8, class 10. Your constitution mod will automatically take into account, so don't change any of these based on your con. Don't touch it. Let me click here to change my ability scores, and I'll just go quick rundown. 14, 18, 12. So if you see when I do this, max hit points goes to 19. Intelligence is 0, don't know why I touched that. Wisdom is 14, and then charisma is still 0. Class DC is either strength or dex, so it's going to be dex, and you are trained in it as a ranger. Speed is 25, and then you're going to affect all of your training. So trained in acrobatics, arcana, athletics. Close these. What else is he trained in? Medicine, nature, religion, society, stealth, and survival. As a ranger, he is trained in all simple and martial weapons. Perception, he is an expert because he's a ranger. Resistances, immunities, none. Conditions, none. Senses, he has low light vision. Actions, he has hunt prey, which we'll get into. Actually, we're not, because I'm not going to cover that. If you want, you can check out my guide to the ranger, which is coming out probably the month after. Expert and fort and reflex, and then trained in will. And that should be everything here. You're probably going to need melee strikes if he's using a scimitar. It's strength based, he's trained. Traits, forceful sweep. Does 1d6 plus strength, and it does slashing damage. That's not slashing. Range attacks can have a short bow. It uses his dex. He's trained in it. It's not agile. The range is 60 feet. Traits are, I think it's just deadly d10. So 1d6. Piercing damage. And then additional 1d10 because it's deadly. I'm really glad that they included that here. If I forgot anything, let me know. Languages, common, and Elven. The problem here is that if you click on one of these things, it's going to show up over here on the right. It gets annoying, but I mean, you'll get used to it and avoid doing that later. Details, you can put in irrelevant crap like ethnicity, nationality, birthplace, age, gender, pronouns, height, weight, appearance, personality, whatever, dude. This is all flavor. I'm not going to tell you how to fill this out. You can fill this out however you like and include as much or as little data as you'd like here. Feats. I have the compendium, so I can just, and you can't see this right now, but I can just drag and drop from there into there. So he took Elven Lore as an ancestry feat, so you can just drag and drop that into here. Class feat, Animal Companion. So you can drag and drop it into here. Remember that it's the Ranger Animal Companion, not the Druid Animal Companion. There's a difference. Whatever. And then Battle Medic. which goes into skill feats. I don't think I included general feats, but general feats are basically feats that you earn at 3rd level and every 4 levels thereafter. They do certain, like, general things, like +5 bonus to movement speed, or more hit points, or increased initiative, or skill feats. Remember that whenever you gain a general feat, you can always choose to take a skill feat that you qualify for instead, which is nice. I think that's it, other than inventory. So you are going to have to include this manually. I don't believe that this is in here, but I'm not going to do this, but like, you would have to include all of your items in here. Bulk is how much stuff your items take up. That is both a measure of how heavy the items are, and how what's the word for it, and how unwieldy they are as well. That's the word. So it's a measure of both of those things. Yeah, start off with a certain amount of gold, you spend it on stuff, etc. Very nice. I think that's it for that. So going back to the presentation, multiclassing. You're probably wondering what happened to multiclassing now that once you pick a class, you have to stick with that class for all 20 levels. So what they did was, instead of being able to directly gain levels from a different class, they now introduced the dedication feat. If all of the prerequisites of said dedication feat are met, it can be taken in lieu. It can be taken in lieu of a class feat. So if we're just going to go back to our BlueStacks real quick, if we go back here, if we take a look at our 2nd level class feat, we can take a normal class feat, or you can take a dedication feat. So this character here could take the cleric dedication, or druid dedication, or collegiate attendant. There's a lot of dedication feats. As you can tell, I already qualify for like 10 of them without even trying. So that is pretty neat, and you get certain abilities. So let's take a look at one of the abilities. Let's take a look at the we don't qualify for barbarian. Let's take a look at the rogue dedication feat, for instance. It is difficult to see, so let me zoom that in real fast, and then center that. So if we have dexterity 14, we would qualify for it. You gain a skill feat and the rogue's surprise attack class feature. You become trained in light armor, and in addition to that, you become trained in either stealth or thievery, plus another skill of your choice. If you're already trained in both of those, you become trained in an additional skill of your choice. You become trained in rogue class DC, and you cannot gain another dedication feat until you have 2 other feats from the rogue archetype. So you need to take the rogue dedication and then 2 more dedication feats on top of that. So basic trickery would be one of them, and then I don't know, advanced trickery would be another, and that would give you 2 rogue class feats, such as nimble dodge, and then quick draw. We already get that as a ranger, so let's take mobility instead, for instance, and then we would be able to take another dedication feat. So let's say cleric. So that prevents you from just spamming multi-class and just taking like 20 of them. But in any case, I think that's it for that. Going back here, multi-class. So these are basically gives you small tidbits of the other base classes. So if you're a rogue, you don't actually get, if you take the rogue dedication feat, you don't actually get sneak attack until you also take the sneak attack archetype feat. So for instance, if you take a multi-class feat, that is basically a subset of the dedication feats. Oh, what's up, Scar? Which apply to the classes. So for instance, if you want to multi-class into archetypes, if you want to multi-class into alchemist, you would take the alchemist dedication feat, which is a multi-class feat. But if you wanted the rune scar dedication, it would not be a multi-class feat. The difference is important because humans have a 9th level ancestry feat called multi-talented, which gives them immediate access to a 2nd level multi-class dedication feat. So you could use it to take the Rogue dedication, but you wouldn't be able to use it to take the Runescarred dedication, for instance. Later archetype feats give certain class features, such as lay on hands. They can give armor or weapon training, depending on what you take as well. There's all sorts of stuff. You can improve saves, which I had already mentioned before. You really just have to take a look through it and see what you can get. Spellcaster dedications are quite interesting, in that once you take them, you gain 2 cantrips on that casting, on that spell list, which is really nice. And you can use them infinite times per day because they're cantrips. And then additional feats, such as, say, basic magic, would be able to give you spell slots. So if you take it at 4th level, you gain a 1st level spell slot, and then without even needing to take additional feats, you gain 1 2nd level spell slot at 6th level, 1 3rd level spell slot at 8th level. And there are feats that chain off this to give you up to 8th level spell casting at 20th level. But you'll never have very many spell slots, never more than 2 per level. So at maximum at 20th level, if you multi-class into a spellcaster, you could have at maximum 2 cantrips, or actually 4 cantrips if you take cantrip expansion. But you can have 4 cantrips and then 2 spell slots of 1st through 6th level, and then 1 spell slot of 7th and 8th. That would take like 5 feats to do, though. And then you can still heighten. If you're a prepared caster, if you're a spontaneous caster, they need to be signature spells. We'll get into that during the spell casting section. Other dedication feats, when you take them, can immediately give you a class feat, even if you're not a member of that class. So the Last Wall Sentry gives you reactive shield when you take it. Reactive shield is, generally speaking, restricted to fighters. So you could get that even if you're not a fighter. And then Dual Weapon Warrior would give you Double Slice, which again is a fighter feat that you can now access even if you're not a fighter. Spellcasting. Oh boy, there's a lot here. First and foremost, as I had mentioned earlier, your spell attack roll will use your spellcasting modifier. So if you're casting, say, Ray of Frost, you wouldn't use your dexterity modifier for ranged attack roll. You would instead use your spellcasting modifier. So let's say you're a wizard, you'd use intelligence to cast that, and then you would be... Oh, I forgot to include something here. I apologize. So LDCs are equal to level plus ability mod plus training. I do apologize for that. So if you... I already guessed. So spell DCs and spell attack rolls are basically the same thing. Spell DCs are just 10 plus your spell attack roll modifier. So if you had 18 intelligence as a wizard first level, your spell attack roll would be plus 7, and your difficulty check would be 17. Prepared casters are basically each slot will hold a single spell. Hey Citra, thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate it. It has been a while. You just woke up? Nice. But it's like 9 a.m. where you live, so that's okay. So each slot holds a single spell. So if I was a cleric and wanted to cast Bless twice in a day, I would need to prepare Bless in both my first level spell slots. Spontaneous casting means that each slot can be used by any spell at that level. So if I was a divine sorcerer and my spells known were Bless and Magic Weapon, I would not need to prepare those in those slots. I could cast them freely. So I could cast Bless twice. Hey, Scar, thank you so much for gifting a sub to Citra. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. It really does. What was I getting at? Right, spontaneous versus prepared casting. So if I was a cleric and wanted to prepare Bless and Magic Weapon once each, I would need to do that. If I was using a divine sorcerer, I could cast Bless twice, or I could cast a Magic Weapon twice, or I could cast them once each, for instance. Heightening allows you to is no longer a metamagic feat. It allows you to cast a spell at a higher level without anything, with no cost. So if I was a wizard and wanted to prepare Fireball as, say, a 5th level spell, it would increase in damage based on the spell, and I would prepare it in that slot. Spontaneous casters cannot heighten their spells freely. Basically, starting at 3rd level, they designate 1 spell per spell level as their signature spell, and those signature spells can be heightened freely. In addition to this, cantrips are freely heightened all the time. So cantrips start off as effectively 0th level spells, but say if you hit 3rd level, and let's take Electric Arc here, it would heighten to that level. So let me bring that up real quick. Let me just search our favorite spell, Electric Arc, and let's take a look. So it's on the Arcane spell list and also the Primal spell list, which means it can be used by wizards and druids. It is a 1st level cantrip. It takes 2 actions to cast. It has a range of 30 feet. Same for basic reflex. And what I'm trying to get at here is it does 1d4 damage plus your ability score modifier if on a failed save. And once you hit 2nd level spells, its damage increases to 2d4, and then and etc. Right. So if you have access to 3rd level spells, it does 3d4 plus spellcasting modifier. 4th level spells 4d4, and so on. Meta magic feats are now taken as class feats, so you don't need. Well, so if you wanted to add an additional effect to your spell, you would take a meta magic feat. And instead of increasing your spell level, it now instead just adds an action. I believe it is somatic. I believe it's a somatic, so it does require an interact action to do it, or sorry, a manipulate action. And so let's take the reach spell, which I've included here. You can extend the range of your spell, and if the next action you use is to cast a spell that has a range, you increase that spell's range by 30 feet, which is important so you don't have to move into harm's way in order to cast a beneficial spell. You can sit back and then cast it from a distance, which is really nice. And as you can see here, there's this one little diamond, and this diamond indicates that it costs an additional action to use. Most spells take 2 actions to cast, so if I was using Shocking Grasp, I would normally need to be in melee combat to use it, but with the Reach spell Meta Magic feat, I can be up to 30 feet away in order to cast it. Focus spells. Focus spells is a different pool of resources from spellcasting. In order to cast the focus pool, you must expend a point from your focus pool. Most focus pools start at 1 point, the exception being the Oracle and also the Maestro Bard, and can reach a maximum of 3. So if you have, let's say you took 5 feats that gave you additional focus spells, your pool would cap at 3. Focus spells that you would get, so for instance Lay on Hands, from other classes or dedications, would count towards that same pool, and you would always use the relevant ability score modifier. Some classes start at level 1 with focus spells, Champion, Sorcerer, Bard, and Druid, and some classes don't, but can take feats in order to get them, being the Monk and the Ranger. The Monk, their key abilities are now tied to focus spells, so for instance Abundant Step is now going to be a focus spell, and it's going to take a focus point in order to use it. After you use one of these focus spells, you can spend 10 minutes of downtime in order to refocus, restoring 1 focus point. Unfortunately, you cannot refocus again until you have spent another focus point. So a 1st level Bard could use a 1st level Maestro Bard starts with 2 focus points, and if they were to use Lingering Composition twice in one combat, they would use both of their focus points, and when they would refocus, they would only restore 1. They wouldn't restore both of them. There are additional feats that allow you to restore more focus points when refocusing. They're always available at 12th and 18th level. Okay, moving on to equipment. There's a bunch of different types of equipment, the most notable ones being weapons and armor. Weapons come in 3 different types: simple, martial, and advanced. There's also fists, which are unarmed attacks. each character, each class comes with a different level of training. The martial classes, such as the champion, ranger, and barbarian, start off trained in all simple and martial weapons. The fighter is special in that they start off experts in all simple and martial weapons, and in addition to that, they're also trained with all advanced weapons. Each weapon has a certain cost. They do a certain amount of damage. They have a certain amount of bulk. For instance, daggers are light. Bow staves carry 2 because they're long and unwieldy. And then most weapons will have a bulk of 1. I believe most two-handed weapons could have 2 bulk. But even as we see here, the bladed Diabolo and bladed Scarf are less than 2 bulk, even though they take 2 hands. There are different weapon groups, as you can see here, and they all apply different critical specialization effects when your character gets access to them. And they also have weapon traits. So I can just go into a couple of them real quick. So the Bastard Sword is a one-handed weapon, but if you wield it with 2 hands, the damage dice increases from D8 to a D12. The Backswing trait gives you a +1 bonus if you've already missed that turn. Finesse means that you can use your dexterity modifier instead of your strength modifier for attack rolls, but not damage rolls. The only way you can get dex to damage is through the Thief Rogue subclass. There is no other way for you to gain dex to damage in this game. Thrown means you can throw it. And there's some other stuff here. Parry means that you can spend an action to effectively use it as a shield, and you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to your armor class. Reach is fantastic because you can attack from 2 squares away instead of 1. Trip means you can use this weapon to make a trip action instead of needing 1 hand free. And an agile weapon means that the penalties for attacking more than once per turn are lessened. Armor comes in 4 shapes. Unarmored, which is basically explorer's clothing. Light armor, which is basically leather or a chain shirt. Medium armor, breastplate, and then heavy armor, full plate. Light armor gives you more dexterity to your armor class, whereas heavier armor restricts your dexterity and imposes skill check penalties as well as movement speed penalties. However, if you have a high enough strength score, you may certainly be able to offset those penalties. So there's 3 types of modes in which you'll spend playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The most common of which is exploration. This is when you're going to be doing most of your role play and talking to your party members as well as NPCs. During exploration mode, you can pick an exploration activity such as scouting or detecting magic, avoiding notice, raising a shield, seeking, that sort of thing. And they all provide different bonuses when you enter combat. And that's when exploration mode ends. In the case that there is a conflict, you will then become into encounter mode where time matters. Generally speaking, exploration mode, time is more fluid. In encounter mode, it's certainly more static, with each round being 6 seconds, each action taking 2 seconds. Every day, you're going to be getting a full night's rest, if possible, and that allows you to restore all your spell slots and your focus pool. In addition to that, you receive healing equivalent to that of your level multiplied by your Constitution modifier. I don't know what would happen. I think there's a minimum of 1 there, so even if you have a negative con modifier, if you're an elf, you don't actually lose hit points when you rest, because that would be pretty weird. You can re-prepare your spells. You gain all your spell slots back, which is really nice. And you're not fatigued anymore, which is also important. Downtime. Downtime is when you have long periods of time in order to speed up through certain events. So say like you complete like a major arc and you're basically given a month to do whatever you want. You can earn income by using a relevant lore skill or a specific skill check. So say if I wanted to do physical labor, I could make an athletics check, and the task level is based on the level of the settlement that you're in. You can always choose to do a lower difficulty check. So say level 1, the task level could be 1, but if you're level 10 and the settlement's maximum level is 4, you couldn't do a task greater than that at level 4. There is an exception here, that being crafting. If you're doing a crafting check, you can always do a difficulty check up to that of your level. And the amount based on how much you would earn is based upon your training in that skill, in addition to whether or not you succeed or fail on the difficulty check. If you're out in the wild, you could subsist, and if you're in a settlement, you could create a forgery or craft. And then finally, you can retrain if you're unsatisfied with some of your class features or class feats, or other feats for that matter. And that takes time and effort in order to do that. So you wouldn't be able to earn income while retraining. You'd basically be able to pick one or the other. And now, finally, combat, the part we've all been waiting for. So there are multiple parts to combat. The first thing that everyone will do is roll initiative. This will determine the turn order and see who goes first, who goes second, and who goes last. You will now use a certain skill when you roll initiative. The default is perception, but it can change depending on the situation you're in. For instance, if you were climbing and get ambushed during the middle of climbing, I'd allow you to use athletics. If you took the avoid notice exploration activity, you'd be able to use stealth. And that's fantastic for rogues, because if they use that, they get to make their enemies flat-footed, which is really nice. If there is a tie between two allies, then they can determine who goes first, who goes second. So if the buffer wants to be able to buff first before the fighter goes in, they can do that. Or if someone else really wants to go first, like, they can do that to get into flanking position or something like that. It depends. If a PC ties with an enemy, the enemy always goes first. And I have this little asterisk here because if you recall from what I was saying previously, there is one exception, that exception being Elven Instincts. It's a 5th level Elven Ancestry feat. They get a +2 circumstance bonus when rolling perception for initiative. And even if they're not rolling perception for initiative, they always win the tie over the enemy. And that's really important, because I took that on my elf, and he's already broken like 3 or 4 ties. So it happens more often than not, and being able to go first can definitely save you. On your turn, you gain 3 actions, and they can be used to do all sorts of things. Most commonly, with martial characters, you're going to be striding and striking. Striding allows you to move up to your movement speed, and then striking allows you to attack enemies. If you attack an enemy twice in a round, your second attack takes a -5 penalty, and a third attack takes a -10, unless they're agile weapons, of course. Casting a spell usually will take 2 actions, and it'll say so right here. There's going to be a little icon indicating how many actions it takes. So for instance, Wall of Fire is going to take 3 actions to cast, and these are the different properties of casting it. A verbal component will require concentration. Material and somatic components will be manipulate actions. And as I mentioned before, stepping, the 5-foot step from Pathfinder 1 makes its return. It takes 1 action to make this 5-foot step, but the benefit of doing so means that you don't provoke any reactions, which can be nice. Combat maneuvers such as grappling, shoving, tripping, and disarming require an athletics check and counts as an attack, and as a result, your multiple attack penalty will apply to it. There are also certain activities that will cost 2 or more actions, such as Power Attack. Power Attack is a 2-action fighter ability. It also has the Flourish trait here, which I'll go into very shortly, and it allows you to add extra damage to one attack at the cost of using up 2 actions. There are 4 types of ability notes. The first one being Flourish. You can only flourish once per round, even if you have different flourish abilities. So the monk can only use Flurry of Blows because it's a flourish ability once per round. And then there's these other abilities called Open and Press. An open ability can only be used if you have not made an attack action in that turn, and a press can only be used if you've made an attack action prior in that turn. The final one is Stance. You can only enter a stance during an encounter, and when you're in that stance, you gain a bunch of benefits until the stance ends, which is when you leave combat, or you get knocked unconscious, or you violate the circumstances of that stance. So, for instance, the monk feat mountain stance would be violated if you, I think if you leave the ground, so if you take a jump action or start levitating or flying, you would then lose that ability. Reactions can be used at any point in the round. The most common reaction is shield block. You can use your shield to absorb some of the damage that you would normally take. Attack of opportunity, an ability given to all classes, all characters in Pathfinder 1, is now limited to just the fighter. If you take the fighter dedication feat, you can get attack of opportunity as soon as 4th level. Barbarians and champions can also take it naturally at 6th. Attack of opportunity is really nice in that your multiple attack penalty does not apply to it, and as well as you don't suffer your current multiple attack penalty when you make that. So even if you're using it somehow on your turn, attack of opportunity would be used at your highest attack bonus. Some spells are also reactions, most notably Featherfall and Breath of Life. They can be used as a reaction whenever the trigger is met. Finally, using Roll20 for combat. We're nearing the end here, ladies and gentlemen, so please do bear with me. Basically, let's shove my character in here, and let's just find a goblin or two. Right. So if initiative is going to be rolled, you would first click on your token, and then click on the initiative button right here. If you're using a different initiative skill, you can select it using this drop down, but he's going to use perception, and he's going to roll initiative, and he rolled a natural 20, which is really nice. What I didn't get into here is degrees of success, and that is really important because that is going to affect criticals and whatnot. So let's roll this goblin. Let's just say roll 1d20 plus 5. You roll a 14. So I would just add the turn and then just give him 14. If we had tied, then this goblin would obviously be going first, but because we didn't, I get to go first. So let's say I wanted to make a short bow strike. So my attack roll was 22. It would do 3 damage normally or 5 damage on a crit. Let's say this goblin's armor class was 10. This goblin's armor class is 10. I beat his armor class by 10 or more, and because I beat it by 10 or more, it is now counted as a critical hit, and I would do this amount of damage. So the way it works is if you beat a DC by 10 or more, that counts as a critical success. If you beat the DC by less than 10, it's a success. If you fail the DC, if you fail to meet the DC by 9 or fewer, it's a failure, and if you fail by 10 or more, it's a crit failure. On attack rolls, usually nothing happens on a crit failure, but if you crit fail a saving throw against a spell, you are in trouble. If you fail versus a damaging effect, you take double damage. If you fail, you take full damage. If you succeed, you take half damage, and if you critically succeed, you take 0 damage. Yeah, that applies for everything across the board, and that makes it such that higher level characters will automatically succeed at lower level tasks. Which is really nice because I don't want to have a random 5% chance of failing. And speaking of which, natural 1s and natural 20s work a bit differently. If you roll a natural 1, your degree of success is reduced by 1, and if you roll a natural 20, your degree of success is increased by 1. That means that even if you roll a natural 1, if your modifier is so high for the given task, you will still just get a regular success as opposed to a critical success. And likewise, if the task is so far above you that there's no way to succeed, a critical failure with a natural 20 would turn it into a regular failure. As a result, there's no way a level 20 character could ever lose to a level 1 character because they would just auto-succeed at all of their saving throws and then auto-hit them, if not auto-crit them, on all of their attacks. As such, I think I had covered just about everything. Does anybody in the chat have any questions? If nobody in the chat responds, that's going to be it. That was a great educational stream. I do appreciate all the support people have given me and showing up. To those of you who aren't aware, my main War Thunder stream will return this Friday. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask. I'm going to go step away and get a glass of water. Grapple? Yeah, I can answer grapple real quick. So in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, unless your weapon has the grapple trait, you are going to need to have a hand open in order to make a grapple check. If you do that, you make an athletics check versus your opponent's fortitude DC? Or is it just armor class? Fortitude DC, okay. It takes one action to do, and you can either grapple to grab someone or to keep it grabbed. In addition to that, there is a restriction on this, being that you need to... what was I going to say? The enemy can't be more than one size greater than you. And when you do this, you make an athletics check versus the fortitude succeed. On a success, they're grabbed until the end of your next turn, unless you move or your opponent escapes. On a critical success, they are restrained until the end of your turn, until the end of your next turn, unless they escape or if you move. If you are grabbed, you are flat-footed, which means you take a -2 penalty to your armor class, and on top of that, you cannot move. You take penalties for using a spell. You need to make a flat check, otherwise you lose the spell. And then on top of that, if I can just get to the 620, if I can just find it in the book, just so I can accurately explain it. Yeah, if you attempt a manipulate action while grabbed, you must succeed at a DC 5 flat check, or it is lost. Roll the check after spending the action, but before any of the effects are applied. If you are restrained, you are pinned, you are flat-footed and immobilized. Are you flat-footed if you're grabbed? You are flat-footed, okay. You can barely move, you're flat-footed, have the immobilized condition. You can't use any action with the attack or manipulate traits except to attempt to escape or force open your bonds. Restrained overrides grabbed. Any other questions on that, Seer? Or does that answer your question? If you want to escape, you can use either an athletics check to break or an acrobatics check to wiggle out. Attack modifier. So basically, you're making an athletics or acrobatics check against their DC. What about climbing? So if you want to climb, it's an athletics check to climb. On a critical success, you move 5 feet. If your movement speed is between 5 and 15, or if your movement speed is most likely between 20 and 35, you'd move 10 feet. And then 5 feet on a regular success. For more information, you can just go ahead and look up all the skills and stuff. Acting heroic can award you another hero point. How would evil characters get an additional hero point? Would they get rewarded for doing something? Or is it the penalty for being evil? I would just basically give you villain points at that point. I would just rename it to villain points as opposed to hero points. So what I would do for villain points is I would make the enemy roll against you twice and take you basically be like, oh, the enemy rolling that 20 against me, villain point, have them re-roll and then accept the second roll. I could do something like that, or just like just rename hero to villain, and whenever you do something especially evil, then you would receive a villain point for that. Okay. I think that's all the time I actually have for tonight. I hope you found this webinar informational and educational, and I hope it helps you build Pathfinder 2nd Edition characters. If you weren't paying attention, and none of you were, there was a little spot in the PowerPoint where I had mentioned something to DM me to indicate that you have watched this video, which is going up on YouTube later. So until you tell me what that is, I am not going to start any campaign. So just leaving that out there. I think that's it for tonight. yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. And then when you have the chance to send me what I asked you to send me, the PowerPoint anyone, by the way, I'm uploading this YouTube to... I'm sorry, I'm uploading this VOD to YouTube for you to watch. I'm not linking the PowerPoint because there's something in it that I don't want you to see. So until next time, guys, I'll see you all on Friday. I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, wonderful rest of your weekend. And yeah, take it easy.